Hey everyone, tonight we're going to step into the world of cacao, a tiny bean that's shaped empires, sparked rituals, and sweetened lives for thousands of years. Picture yourself deep in a Mesoamerican jungle, the air thick with humidity, as ancient hands pluck vibrant cacao pods from twisted trees. This isn't just a story of chocolate, it's a saga of gods, conquest, and global obsession. And honestly, you might not survive the craving this'll spark. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where you're joining from. Now, turn down the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's get started tonight. You're standing in a dense, humid jungle, the air heavy with the scent of earth and damp leaves. Somewhere in what's now southern Mexico, over 3,000 years ago, the Olmec people moved silently among cacao trees, their hands brushing against bright pods that dangle like strange, colorful fruit. This is where it all begins, where cacao isn't just a plant, it's a gift from the gods, a sacred thread woven into the fabric of life. You can almost hear the rustle of leaves as an Olmec priest prepares a bitter, frothy drink, reserved not for just anyone, but for rituals that connect the living to the divine. The Olmec, one of Mesoamerica's earliest civilizations, are shrouded in mystery, their cities swallowed by time. Historians still debate whether they were the first to cultivate cacao, but evidence ancient pottery with traces of theobromine, cacao's chemical fingerprint, suggests they were. You see them grinding the beans with stone, mixing them with water and spices, creating a drink that's not sweet, but intense, almost otherworldly. It's not about pleasure, it's about power. The drink is poured during ceremonies, maybe to honor a god, or mark a sacrifice. You notice the reverence in their movements, the way they treat each pod like it holds a secret. An odd detail catches your eye. Some vessels are shaped like animals, jaguars, or serpents, as if the cacao itself carries the spirit of the wild. You shift forward in time, stepping into the world of the Maya, who take cacao to new heights. By 250 CE, their cities like Tikal and Copan buzz with life pyramids piercing the sky, markets alive with voices. Cacao is no longer just a ritual drink. It's the heartbeat of their culture. You watch a Maya noble sip from a painted cup, the foam rising like a crown on the surface. The froth, created by pouring the liquid from one vessel to another, is a status symbol, proof of skill and wealth. You can't help but imagine posting a pic of that foam on X today, captioned, "Living my best Maya life." The Maya believe cacao is divine, a gift from the gods of creation, as told in their sacred text, the Popol Vuh. You see priests offering it during ceremonies, its bitter taste, mixed with chili or cornmeal, meant to invigorate the spirit. It's not just a drink, it's currency. A few beans buy a tamale. 100 might get you a turkey. You chuckle at the thought of walking into a coffee shop today and slapping down a bag of cacao beans for your latte. But back then, it was serious business. Merchants stored beans like gold, and you catch a glimpse of someone trying to pass off clay fakes, counterfeit cacao, the oldest scam in the book. Cacao's role in Maya life goes deeper. You see it at weddings, where bride and groom share a cup to seal their bond. At funerals, cacao vessels are placed in tombs, offerings for the journey to the afterlife. The trees themselves are sacred, their pods painted on ceramics alongside gods and spirits. Historians still debate whether cacao was consumed only by elites or if commoners got a taste. but the evidence leans toward exclusivity. Sorry, no chocolate bars for the masses yet. You feel the weight of its importance, how it binds the Maya to their gods, their land, their identity. As you linger in this vibrant world, you notice something peculiar. The Maya don't sweeten their cacao. It's bitter, spicy, and meant to awaken, not comfort. You try to imagine chugging a chili-charged cocoa and wince. Guess that's why energy drinks exist now. The jungle hums around you, and you realize cacao isn't just a crop. It's a story, one that's only beginning. The Olmec and Maya have set the stage, but the curtain's about to rise on a much larger scene. You're now deep in the heart of a Maya city, around 600 CE, where the air vibrates with the hum of ritual and commerce. Tikal's stone pyramids loom above you, their steps worn by priests and nobles who carry cacao in painted vessels as if it's liquid gold. You are standing in a bustling marketplace, where merchants shout prices and barter with cacao beans' small brown treasures that clink in woven sacks. This isn't just a drink anymore, it's the pulse of Maya life, tying the sacred to the everyday. You watch a trader exchange 10 beans for a bundle of maize, and you can't help but grin. Imagine paying for groceries with chocolate chips today. Cacao's role here is woven into every major moment. You see a royal coronation, where a new ruler sips a frothy cacao drink, the foam thick and deliberate, a sign of divine favor. At a wedding, bride and groom share a cup, their hands brushing as they seal their union with its bitter taste. You notice an odd detail. Some cups have glyphs naming their owners, like personalized coffee mugs, but way fancier, think Maya barista art, with a side of sacred vibes. These vessels aren't just dishes, they're heirlooms, passed down through generations, each one telling a story of power or prestige. The Maya's reverence for cacao runs deeper than ceremony. You follow a priest to a temple where he pours cacao as an offering to the gods, its dark liquid pooling on a stone altar. The Popol Vuh, their sacred text, describes cacao as a gift from the gods who shaped humanity from maize and cacao. You feel the weight of that belief. Every sip is a connection to the divine, a way to touch the eternal. Historians still debate whether cacao's spiritual power came from its rarity or its psychoactive compounds, like theobromine, which might have sparked mild visions. Either way, you see priests drinking it to commune with deities, their eyes distant, as if seeing beyond the jungle. Beyond rituals, cacao is currency, and you're amused by how it's both money and sacred. A noble hands over a sack of beans to settle a debt, while nearby, someone tries to slip in a fake clay bean. Yep, even the Maya had to deal with scammers. You chuckle, thinking of someone trying to pay for parking with knockoff Hershey's Kisses. Cacao's value shapes social bonds too. Offering a guest a cup is a gesture of respect, like serving fancy wine at a dinner party. You watch two leaders share a drink to seal a peace deal, their cautious smiles hiding years of rivalry. The artistry of cacao catches your eye. Painted ceramics show gods emerging from cacao pods, their faces fierce and divine. The trees themselves are symbols of fertility, their branches curving like life itself. You smirk at the thought of a modern influencer posing with a cacao pod, hashtagging number ancient aesthetic. But here, it's no trend, it's identity. Cacao binds the Maya to their gods, their land, their community. You feel the rhythm of their world, a cycle of planting, harvesting, and worship. all centered on this one small bean. As you linger, you notice the labor behind it all. Farmers tend cacao trees in the shade of the jungle, their hands stained from splitting pods. It's hard work, but it's sacred too. The Maya don't just grow cacao. They honor it, believing it keeps the universe in balance. You can't shake the thought that this bean, so central to their world, is about to journey far beyond these jungles, carrying its sacred weight into new hands, hands that might not understand its meaning. You're now in the heart of Tenochtitlan, the glittering capital of the Aztec Empire, in 1519, where canals shimmer under the sun and temples tower like stone giants. The air smells of smoke and spice, and in the bustling markets, cacao beans are everywhere, piled high in baskets, traded like coins, and treated with a reverence that makes you pause. You're standing among warriors and nobles, watching as cacao, or xocolotl, becomes more than a drink. It's the lifeblood of power, wealth, and war. You smirk, thinking how your local coffee shop would go wild for this kind of hype around a beverage. The Aztecs don't grow cacao here. The high, dry plateau isn't suited for it. Instead, you see merchants hauling beans from conquered southern regions, tribute paid to the empire's might. These beans are currency, and you watch a trader swap 10 for a rabbit, 100 for a turkey hen. It's serious business. Counterfeiting a bean by filling it with dirt is a crime that could cost you dearly. You chuckle, imagining someone trying to pass off fake Ms. as payment today. An odd detail catches your eye. Cacao beans are stored in granaries like a bank vault, their value rivaling gold. You follow a noble to a royal feast where Emperor Moctezuma II downs cup after cup of xocolotl. Legend says he drinks 50 a day, believing it fuels his strength and, his romantic prowess. You grin at the thought, talk about the original energy drink pitch. The drink is bitter, mixed with chili, maize, or sometimes vanilla, and poured to create that prized froth. It's not for commoners. Only warriors, priests, and nobles get a taste, often before battle, to sharpen the mind. You watch a warrior sip it slowly, his eyes fierce, as if drawing courage from the gods themselves. Cacao's divine status hits you hard. The Aztecs believe it was stolen from paradise by Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, and gifted to humanity. You see priests offering it to deities, the dark liquid poured onto altars or burned as incense. Historians still debate whether cacao's sacred role stemmed from its rarity or its stimulating effects. But you feel its power in the air. Every cup is a ritual, every bean a piece of the divine. At a ceremony, you notice a peculiar sight. Cacao mixed with blood, a chilling reminder of the Aztecs' intense spiritual world. The marketplace hums around you, and you see cacao shaping social bonds. Sharing a cup seals alliances, much like a handshake deal today, but with more flair. You can't help but laugh, picturing a modern CEO offering hot cocoa at a board meeting. Yet here, it's deadly serious. Cacao is wealth, war, and worship rolled into one. You watch a noble servant prepare it, grinding beans on a stone metate, the rhythm almost hypnotic. The drink's bitterness hits you as you imagine tasting it. No sugar, just raw intensity. As you stand in Tenochtitlan's grandeur, you sense a storm coming. Spanish ships are nearing the coast, and with them, men like Hernan Cortez, who will soon taste this strange brew. You wonder how something so sacred could survive the collision of worlds. The cacao beans, piled high in the market seem to pulse with a story that's about to leap across oceans, carrying both glory and shadow. You're standing on the sun-baked shores of Mexico in 1519. The salty sea breeze whipping through your hair as Spanish ships creak against the waves. Hernán Cortés and his band of conquistadors have just landed, their armor glinting under the relentless sun, eyes wide with greed for gold and glory. But amid the chaos of conquest, something unexpected catches their attention. A strange, dark drink served in golden cups by Aztec nobles. You watch as Moctezuma's servants pour chocolatl for the emperor, the froth bubbling like a witch's brew, and you can't help but lean in closer, imagining the bitter kick hitting your tongue. The Spanish, tough as they are, wrinkle their noses at first, sip unsweetened, spicy, and nothing like the wine back home. One soldier mutters, "It tastes like mud," and you smirk, thinking how that's basically what some people say about kale smoothies today. This is the moment cacao crosses worlds, a canonical historical event that flips the script on a sacred bean. Cortés, ever the opportunist, doesn't just conquer land. He samples the local fare, noting how the Aztecs revere this drink as a source of strength. You see him and his men observing Moctezuma, downing dozens of cups daily, believing it boosts vitality. Talk about the original pre-workout supplement. The conquistadors, initially repulsed, start to see its potential. It's energizing, exotic, and tied to the empire's wealth. As they plunder Tenochtitlan, sacks of cacao beans are hauled aboard ships alongside gold, destined for Spain. You feel the shift in the air, like when a viral trend jumps continents overnight. An odd detail pops up as you watch the preparations. The Aztecs sometimes flavor their xocolatl with honey or flowers, but one wild recipe includes chili and even a dash of hallucinogenic mushrooms for rituals. Historians still debate whether the Spanish exaggerated these mixes in their reports to justify conquest, portraying Aztec customs as barbaric, or if it was all part of the cultural clash. Either way, you chuckle softly, picturing a conquistador accidentally tripping on a spiked cocoa bet that wasn't in the mission briefing. You follow Cortés back to Spain in the 1522nd. The ship's heavy with New World treasures. Cacao arrives in European courts as a curiosity, first prepared in monasteries where monks grind the beans, just like the Aztecs taught them. You're in a dimly lit Spanish kitchen now, the scent of roasted cacao filling the room, mixed with the unfamiliar tang of chili. Nobles sip it tentatively, calling it unpalatable at first, but word spreads. It's served hot, not cold like in Mesoamerica, and you notice the shift, Europeans tweaking it to suit their tastes, adding nutmeg or cinnamon. You grin, thinking how that's humanity in a nutshell. Take something sacred, remix it, and claim it as your own, like turning a folk song into a pop hit. The drink catches on among the elite, a status symbol whispered about in royal salons. You see King Charles V trying it, his court buzzing with tales of the drink of the gods from across the ocean. Monks keep the recipe secret at first, guarding it like a holy relic, but soon it leaks out. You lean against a stone wall in a Madrid palace, watching ladies in elaborate gowns sip from delicate cups, their conversations laced with excitement over this new world novelty. It's not sweet yet that comes later, but its bitterness is exotic, a far cry from the bland ales of the time. You can't resist a lighthearted jab. Imagine if Cortés had brought back avocados instead. Guacamole might have been the royal treat, smeared on toast for queens. As cacao spreads, it carries shadows of its origins. You overhear Spanish chroniclers describing Aztec rituals, painting them as savage to rationalize the conquest. The beans, once currency for turkeys, now buy influence in Europe. You watch merchants in Seville unloading crates, the air thick with the earthy aroma that hints at distant jungles. One peculiar practice the Spanish note but don't adopt: Aztec women using cacao butter on their skin for smoothness. Historians still debate whether this beauty hack influenced early European cosmetics or if it was dismissed as superstition, like so many indigenous wisdoms. You feel the rhythm of change, the bean's journey from ritual to rarity. Remember how the Maya used it as money? Now it's bargaining power in a new empire. You smirk again, pondering if Moctezuma knew his daily fix would spark a global craze. Probably not, or he'd have charged export fees. The conquest isn't just about land. It's about tastes, ideas, and that irresistible pull of the unknown. As the sun sets over the Spanish horizon, you sense Cacao's story twisting again, ready to sweeten up and seduce a continent that's only just begun to crave it. You're gliding through the opulent halls of a Spanish palace in the mid-1500s, the air thick with the scent of cinnamon and simmering pots, as monks in dimly lit kitchens experiment with this strange New World import. Cacao has crossed the ocean, no longer the bitter brew of Aztec warriors, but something Europeans are molding to their tastes, and you can almost hear the clink of silver spoons stirring in delicate cups. The transformation begins slowly, like a whisper in a crowded room, as sugar harvested from distant colonies meets cacao for the first time, turning what was once a sharp, spicy elixir into a velvety indulgence that whispers promises of luxury and warmth. You watch as Spanish nobles gather in salons, their lace collars stiff and faces powdered, sipping hot chocolate from ornate porcelain. It's no longer cold and frothy like in Tenochtitlan. Here, it's heated over gentle flames, the steam rising in lazy curls that carry hints of vanilla and nutmeg. Remember how the Aztecs revered it as a gift from Quetzalcoatl? Now, it's catching on in Europe as a fashionable vice, whispered about like the latest court gossip. You smirk, imagining a modern barista eyeing this scene and thinking, finally, someone figured out the latte. The canonical historical event that sparks this shift is the arrival of cacao in Spanish monasteries around 1528, where monks, like those in the Order of Friars Minor, refine the recipe, swapping chili for sugar and creating a drink that's sweet enough to seduce even the pickiest royal palate. An odd detail catches your eye in these early adaptations. Some Europeans mix cacao with ambergris, that weird whale vomit prized as a perfume, believing it adds an exotic depth. Talk about turning stomach contents into a delicacy. You chuckle softly, picturing a fancy dinner party where someone spikes the hot chocolate with what's essentially ocean puke, and the guests rave about its mysterious allure. Historians still debate whether this addition was purely for flavor or if it stemmed from a misguided attempt to mimic Aztec aphrodisiac claims, blending Old World luxury with New World myths in a quirky cultural mashup. You drift into the court of King Philip II, where chocolate becomes a daily ritual for the aristocracy, served in the mornings to chase away the chill of stone castles. The sweetness changes everything. What was once energizing and bitter now comforts, its creamy texture coating your imagined tongue like a hug from the inside. You feel the buzz in the air, as word spreads beyond Spain to Italy, France, and even England by the 1602nd. In Paris, you see fashionable ladies in silk gowns hosting chocolate parties, where the drink flows freely, sparking flirtations and alliances. It's not just a beverage anymore. It's a status symbol, expensive and rare, imported at great cost. You lean back against a velvet cushion in your mind, savoring the irony cacao, once currency for turkeys in Aztec markets, now buys social clout in Europe's glittering halls. The transformation isn't without its shadows, though you sense them lurking just beyond the candlelight. As demand grows, so does the pressure on colonies to supply more beans and sugar. But for now, the focus is on delight. You watch a French chef experiment, adding milk for creaminess, a tweak that foreshadows even greater changes. It's playful, almost whimsical, how Europeans remix this indigenous treasure, turning ritual into recreation. You grin at the thought of an Aztec warrior time-traveling here and staring in horror at the sugared version. Where's the chili? This is dessert, not strength. By the 17th century, chocolate houses spring up in London, smoky dens where men debate politics over steaming cups, the air rich with tobacco and cocoa. You're there in one, eavesdropping on merchants, boasting about their latest shipments, the beans roasted to perfection. An unusual practice emerges. Doctors prescribe chocolate as medicine, claiming it cures everything from heartache to indigestion. Yep, the original chocolate therapy session. You laugh lightly, wondering if that's where the idea of eating your feelings came from, like scarfing a bar after a bad day and calling it self-care. You notice how women embrace it too, in secret gatherings where chocolate fuels whispered secrets and laughter. The drink's allure spreads like wildfire, but it's still elite common folk rarely taste it, saving their pennies for ale instead. Historians still debate whether chocolate's popularity in Europe was driven more by its exotic origins or its newfound sweetness, a chicken or egg question that ties into broader colonial exchanges. Either way, you feel the pull, the way sugar softens cacao's edges, making it irresistible, addictive even. As you wander these evolving scenes, the sensory details envelop you. The gentle crackle of a fire under a copper pot, the warm spice tickling your nose, the smooth glide of chocolate over lips. It's a far cry from the jungle pods you started with, yet the essence remains that subtle buzz, that hint of the divine. You smirk again, thinking how, if Cortez could see this, he'd pat himself on the back for discovering the ultimate party favor. But deep down, you know it's more than that. This sweet transformation is rewriting cacao's story, from sacred seed to seductive sip, setting the stage for empires to crave it on a scale the Aztecs never dreamed. The palaces fade slightly as you pause, the narrative humming like a low fan in the background, inviting you to sink deeper into this unfolding tale. Chocolate's journey is picking up speed, and you can't help but wonder what shadows will follow this sugary glow. You're drifting through the bustling ports of Seville in the late 1602nd, the salty tang of the sea, mixing with the earthy aroma of freshly unloaded cacao beans, as crates stack high on the docks like treasures from a distant dream. The air hums with shouts of merchants haggling over shipments, their voices echoing off wooden ships that creak under the weight of New World goods. But as you lean closer, peering into the shadows behind the glamour, you uncover a darker truth. Europe's growing love affair with chocolate isn't just sweet, it's built on a foundation of exploitation, where the crave for cacao fuels one of history's most brutal systems, the transatlantic slave trade. You feel the shift in the atmosphere, like when you bite into a fancy truffle and suddenly remember the factory worker who made it, the romance fading into reality. Sugar and cacao, that perfect pair, now delighting royal palates across the continent, demand more than just clever recipes. They require endless labor in sweltering colonies. You watch as European powers, the Spanish, Portuguese, French, Dutch, and British, expand plantations in the Caribbean, Brazil, and Central America, where the humid climate is ideal for growing these crops. The canonical historical event that ignites this dark chapter is the establishment of large-scale sugar plantations in the 1502. But by the 17th century, cacao joins the frenzy, with islands like Jamaica and Hispaniola turning into vast fields of pods and cane. You see workers bending under the sun, their hands splitting cacao pods by hand, fermenting beans in sweat-soaked piles. The process as intensive as it is unforgiving. No machines here, just human endurance, pushed to the brink. To meet the skyrocketing demand, colonial powers turned to slavery, shipping millions of Africans across the Atlantic in chains, their lives traded like commodities. You stand on the deck of a slave ship in your mind, the waves rocking gently, while the horror below decks unfolds in cramped, disease-ridden holds. These enslaved people, ripped from families and cultures, are forced onto plantations where they toil from dawn to dusk, harvesting cacao they'll never taste in its sweetened form. You can almost feel the blistering heat on your skin, the ache in your back from imagining a day's work, and you wince talk about the ultimate bad boss story, where the perks are whips and 0 days off. Historians still debate whether the demand for chocolate specifically accelerated the slave trade, or if it was just another crop in the sugar-driven machine. But the numbers don't lie. By the 1702, over 12 million Africans are enslaved, many fueling the cacao boom that keeps Europe's cups full. An odd detail emerges as you wander a Caribbean plantation. Some enslaved workers create counterfeit cacao by stuffing empty pods with dirt to meet quotas, a small act of resistance that echoes the Aztec fakes you chuckled about earlier. You grin faintly, thinking how rebellion can hide in the humblest places, like sneaking veggies into a kid's chocolate cake, except here, it's survival, not nutrition. The human cost is staggering. Families torn apart, cultures erased, all for the sake of a drink that aristocrats sip in ignorance or indifference. You overhear London drawing room chatter, ladies praising the exquisite smoothness of their hot chocolate, unaware that each spoonful carries the sweat of unseen hands. It's a bitter irony, isn't it? The same bean once sacred to Maya gods now profanes lives across oceans. You shift to the drawing rooms of Paris and Madrid, where chocolate's popularity soars, but the shadows follow. Plantations expand relentlessly, deforestation scarring the land as trees are cleared for more crops. You see British merchants in smoky taverns, toasting to profits from cacao imports, their laughter ringing hollow against the backdrop of suffering. Remember how sugar softened cacao's bite in Europe? Now it masks a deeper bitterness, one of blood and chains. You smirk lightly, pondering if this is where the phrase bittersweet really comes from, like enjoying a breakup song that hits too close to home. The system is entrenched. Enslaved labor keeps costs low, making chocolate more accessible, turning it from royal treat to budding commodity. Yet in the colonies, resistance simmers, runaway communities form in hidden jungles, preserving African traditions amid the pods. The air grows heavier as you delve deeper, sensing how this exploitation weaves into empire building. French colonies in Haiti become cacao powerhouses, the beans shipped back to fuel Versailles indulgences, while workers endure brutal conditions that spark whispers of rebellion. You feel the tension building, like a storm cloud over the sea, knowing these seeds of injustice will one day erupt in revolutions. An unusual practice catches your eye. Some plantation owners use cacao butter as a crude medicine for workers' wounds, rubbing it on blisters from the very crop that caused them talk about ironic first aid, like using coffee grounds to treat a caffeine headache. You chuckle softly, but it fades quickly. The joke lands awkwardly amid the gravity. Europe's obsession only deepens, with chocolate houses multiplying, debates raging over its moral effects. Some call it sinful, others a godsend for health. You wander a Amsterdam market, the scent of roasting beans drawing crowds, but you know the price paid far away. The trade entangles continents. African lives for American soil, European gold for indigenous loss. It's a global web, sticky as melted chocolate on fingers. You pause, reflecting on how something so delightful hides such pain, like finding out your favorite snack funds, a villain's lair in a spy movie. Yet amid the darkness, sparks of humanity endure, enslaved cooks, blending African spices into cacao preparations, subtly reclaiming a piece of home. As the century turns, you see the first cracks. Abolitionist voices rising faintly in England, questioning the ethics of sweetened luxuries. But for now, the machine grinds on, plantations sprawling, ships sailing with human cargo. You feel the weight settling, the narrative shifting from delight to discomfort. Like that moment, a cozy bedtime story turns unexpectedly spooky. Remember the frothy Maya cups? Now they're echoed in elegant European porcelain, but the froth hides a storm. The ports fade around you, the sea breeze cooling, as cacao's story twists toward industry, carrying its shadows forward into a world hungry for more. You're stepping into the smoky haze of early 19th century Amsterdam, the air thick with the grind of machinery and the rich, nutty scent of roasting cacao beans, wafting from brick factories that hum like beehives on steroids. The canals glisten under a gray sky, barges laden with crates from distant colonies chugging along, as inventors in grease-stained aprons tinker with presses and molds, forever changing that sacred bean from a fancy sip to something you can snap, melt, and devour on the go. Europe's sweet tooth has grown insatiable, and now the Industrial Revolution is crashing into cacao's world, turning it from elite elixir to everyday delight, though not without a few quirky mishaps along the way. You watch as Coenraad Johannes van Houten, a Dutch chemist with a knack for innovation, hunches over his workbench in 1828, fiddling with a hydraulic press that looks like a steampunk torture device, but is actually the key to modern chocolate. This is the canonical historical event that kicks off the Industrial Chocolate Revolution. Van Houten's invention of the cocoa press, which squeezes out the natural fat cacao butter from roasted beans, leaving a dry powder that's easier to mix and cheaper to produce. You can almost hear the hiss of the press as it works its magic, separating the buttery gold from the powdery base, creating what we now call Dutch cocoa. It's a game changer, making chocolate lighter, more soluble, and way less fatty. so it doesn't separate in your cup like oil on water. You smirk, thinking how this guy basically invented the original low-fat fad, except instead of kale smoothies, it's cocoa that won't clog your arteries as fast. Talk about a delicious diet hack from the 1802nd. The process spreads like wildfire across Europe, factories popping up in places like England and Switzerland, where the whir of gears and the clatter of conveyor belts drown out the old hand-grinding ways. You're wandering a bustling workshop now, the floor dusted with cocoa powder that sticks to your shoes like fine sand, as workers pour the new powder into vats, blending it with sugar and a touch of that extracted cacao butter. Remember how sugar softened the Aztec bitterness back in Spanish courts? Now it's amplified by machines, churning out batches that could fill a king's treasury. You feel the vibration under your feet from the presses, the air warming with the scent of melting fat, and you can't help but inhale deeply, imagining sneaking a taste when the foreman's not looking. An odd detail catches your eye amid the innovation. Van Houten's press sometimes produced cacao butter that was used not just for chocolate, but for early soaps and cosmetics, turning the fatty byproduct into bars that lathered up baths across Europe. Yep, the same stuff that makes your chocolate bar melt in your mouth once cleaned Victorian underarms. You chuckle softly, picturing a dandy in a top hat sudsing up with what's essentially chocolate waste, then heading out for a hot cocoa. Talk about full circle indulgence, like recycling your candy wrappers into spa treatments. Historians still debate whether Van Houten's invention was driven more by a quest for better flavor or sheer economic necessity. As Europe's cacao imports skyrocketed and old methods couldn't keep up, blurring the line between science and profit in this bean bonanza, you drift to Bristol, England, where the Fry family takes Van Houten's powder to the next level in 1847, mixing it back with cacao butter and sugar to create the world's first solid chocolate bar. You're there in their factory, the molds clinking as the warm mixture sets into neat rectangles, ready to be wrapped and shipped. It's portable now. No more sipping from cups. This bar fits in your pocket, a snack for factory workers or soldiers on the march. The sensory rush hits you, the snap of breaking a piece, the slow melt on your tongue, that creamy sweetness blooming like a secret. You grin, thinking how this invention probably saved countless awkward dates. Nothing says romance like handing over a bar instead of spilling hot chocolate on your crush's lap. Mass production ramps up, with companies like Cadbury in England scaling operations, their massive vats bubbling like cauldrons in a wizard's lair. You see workers, mostly women in aprons, stirring endless batches, the steam rising in clouds that carry hints of vanilla and milk. Remember the shadowy plantations from earlier? Their output feeds these machines now. Beans roasted in giant drums that rumble like thunder, ground into nibs that crunch under massive stones. It's efficient, almost mesmerizing, but you sense the human touch fading, replaced by steam engines that chug tirelessly. You lean against a railing in the factory, watching bars tumble off assembly lines, each one a little miracle of engineering, and you can't resist a lighthearted jab. If only the Maya could see this, they'd trade their sacred cups for a conveyor belt subscription, like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optic for your divine downloads. The revolution isn't just about bars. It's democratizing chocolate, dropping prices so even the working class can afford a nibble. You wander London streets, where vendors hawk affordable treats from carts, kids clutching sticky wrappers with wide eyes. It's a far cry from Moctezuma's golden cups now molded into shapes like coins or animals for fun. You feel the excitement building, the world shrinking as railways ship these bars far and wide, turning cacao from rarity to routine. Another quirky innovation pops up. Early chocolate fountains, primitive versions used in factories to coat nuts, foreshadowing those gooey centerpieces at modern weddings. Imagine explaining to an Aztec priest that his god's gift would one day drench strawberries at a buffet. You pause in the midst of this mechanical symphony, the clanks and whirs lulling you like a rhythmic bedtime story as chocolate evolves from drink to solid staple. The air cools slightly, the scent lingering like a promise of more tweaks ahead. You smirk one last time, pondering if Van Houten knew his press would birth billions of bars, or if he just wanted a smoother cuppa. Either way, the bean's journey is accelerating, machines paving the way for sweeter horizons. You're winding your way up the misty slopes of the Swiss Alps. In the late 1802, the crisp mountain air nipping at your cheeks, while cowbells clang softly in the distance, like nature's own quirky soundtrack to innovation. Factories dot the landscape here, their chimneys puffing gentle steam that smells faintly of warm milk and roasted nuts, as Swiss chocolatiers take that industrial powder from Van Houten's press and elevate it into something silky, creamy, and downright addictive. You're stepping into a world where precision meets passion, where the Swiss don't just make chocolate, they refine it like watchmakers crafting timepieces, turning a mass-produced treat into an art form that melts on your tongue and lingers in your dreams. You settle into a cozy workshop in Vevey, the wooden floors creaking underfoot as Daniel Peter, a candle maker turned chocolate wizard, experiments with condensed milk in 1875, forever changing the game with the invention of milk chocolate. This is the canonical historical event that puts Switzerland on the map as chocolate royalty. Peter's breakthrough, blending cacao with Henri Nestlé's powdered milk to create a bar that's smoother, sweeter, and less bitter than anything before. You watch him stir the mixture over a low flame, the steam rising in lazy swirls that carry hints of vanilla and fresh cream, the whole room warming like a hug from your grandma's kitchen. Remember Van Houten's fatty press from those Dutch factories? Peter builds on that, adding milk to tame the intensity, making chocolate accessible to kids and adults alike. No more wincing at the Aztec bitterness you chuckled about earlier. The sensory rush hits you as you imagine biting into that first milk chocolate bar. The gentle snap, the slow melt coating your mouth in velvety waves, that subtle nuttiness from the Alps dairy cows mingling with the cacao's earthy depth. You smirk, thinking how this invention probably saved countless bad moods. Nothing fixes a rainy day like milky sweetness, right? It's like upgrading from black coffee to a caramel latte. Suddenly, everyone's invited to the party. Peter's creation spreads quickly, Nestle jumping in to commercialize it, and soon Swiss bars are shipping across Europe, their wrappers crinkling like promises of indulgence. You feel the pride in the air, the Swiss treating chocolate like their national secret, precise and pure, much like their famous neutrality in world affairs. An odd detail pops up as you poke around the workshop. Early milk chocolate experiments sometimes involve goat's milk instead of cow's, giving bars a tangy, almost funky twist that testers compared to aged cheese. Yep, imagine a chocolate bar tasting like it rolled around in a barn for a bit. You chuckle lightly, picturing a Swiss farmer shrugging and saying, "Well, the goats were closer," then watching horrified faces as folks nibble on what's basically a fondue-flavored candy. Talk about a flavor fail that didn't make the cut. like trying to make pizza with pineapple and wondering why Italians are glaring. Some experiments are best left in the lab. Historians still debate whether Peter's success was more about perfecting the milk ratio or sheer luck with Nestlé's condensed tech, a mix of science and serendipity that turned rivals into partners in this creamy conquest. You drift to nearby Lausanne, where Rodolphe Lindt is busy with his own magic in 1879, inventing the conching machine, a massive roller that churns chocolate for hours, sometimes days, refining its texture to that melt-in-your-mouth silkiness we crave today. You're there in his factory, the machine humming like a giant purring cat, its paddles slowly grinding the mixture until every particle is polished smooth, eliminating any grit from the cacao nibs. The air thickens with the warm, hypnotic aroma of cacao butter releasing its secrets, and you can almost taste the difference. Pre-conching chocolate was coarse, like sandy brownies, but Lindt's version glides like butter on hot toast. Remember the fry bars from England? Those first solids that snapped but didn't seduce? Lindt takes that and elevates it, making chocolate not just edible but experiential, a slow dance on your palate. The jokes keep coming as you watch workers monitor the conch, their faces serious like they're guarding state secrets, because in Switzerland, chocolate recipes are basically classified. You grin, imagining a spy thriller where agents steal conching blueprints instead of nukes, whispering, "The texture is the key to world domination." Or picture a modern gym bro chugging a protein shake laced with conched cacao, claiming it's his secret to gain sorry dude. But Lindt was flexing smoothness way before whey powder. The process isn't quick. Early conching took up to 72 hours, the machine's rhythm lulling you into a trance, like ASMR for foodies, with its steady scrape and swirl. You lean closer, feeling the warmth radiate from the vat, the chocolate transforming from paste to liquid gold, ready to be poured into molds that clink softly as they cool. Switzerland's refinement isn't just technical, it's cultural, with brands like Lindt and Toblerone emerging, their bars shaped like mountains or wrapped in gold foil that rustles like autumn leaves. You wander a Geneva shop, shelves lined with these innovations, the light catching on glossy surfaces that promise pure bliss. Milk chocolate becomes a staple, exported worldwide, but the Swiss keep the best for themselves, their precision ensuring every bar is flawless. You feel the legacy building, how these tweaks build on the industrial wave, making chocolate democratic yet decadent. Another lighthearted jab bubbles up. If the Aztecs' time traveled here, they'd trade their chili spikes for a conched milk bar, then ask Lindt for the recipe like it's a family heirloom. Sorry, Moctezuma, but the Swiss don't share secrets lightly. As you linger in these alpine workshops, the fog rolling in from the lakes, you sense chocolate's evolution accelerating. The refinements here aren't just about taste. They're about perfection, turning a colonial crop into a global icon. You inhale one last whiff of that creamy air, the bells fading softly as the story shifts toward even bigger horizons, where America grabs the baton and runs with it. You're strolling through the rolling fields of Pennsylvania in the late 1802, where the air carries the faint sweetness of molasses and the distant clatter of a factory that's about to rewrite chocolate's story for the masses. Hershey, a small town buzzing with ambition, feels like the heart of a new American dream, one where cacao isn't just for aristocrats in European salons, but for every kid with a penny and a sweet tooth. You're standing outside Milton Hershey's factory, the rhythmic thump of machines mixing with the mooing of nearby cows, as this caramel maker, turned chocolatier, harnesses the industrial age to make chocolate a household name. The scent of roasted cacao beans wafts out, wrapping you in a warm, nutty embrace, and you can't help but feel like you've wandered into the birthplace of a candy empire. The canonical historical event here is the founding of the Hershey Chocolate Company in 1894, when Milton Hershey shifts from caramels to chocolate, applying mass production techniques to churn out affordable milk chocolate bars for the average American. You watch workers in crisp aprons load cacao nibs into roaring roasters, the beans crackling like tiny fireworks as they're ground into a smooth paste. Hershey builds on Swiss innovations, remember Daniel Peter's milk chocolate, but scales it up with American gusto, using fresh local milk and assembly lines that hum like a well-oiled engine. You imagine biting into a Hershey bar, its creamy sweetness hitting like a nostalgic punch, the kind that makes you think of childhood summers and sticky fingers. It's not fancy like Swiss bars, but it's reliable, like a pickup truck in a world of sports cars. An odd detail catches your eye. Early Hershey bars were sometimes flavored with a hint of molasses from his caramel days, giving them a slight twang that puzzled testers who expected pure Swiss-style creaminess. You chuckle, picturing a kid in 1900 unwrapping a bar and squinting like, "Is this chocolate or my grandma's cookie recipe gone rogue?" Historians still debate whether Hershey's success came from perfecting mass production or simply nailing the price point 5 cents a bar, cheap enough for factory workers to splurge. Either way, you see the game change. Chocolate's no longer a luxury. It's a lunchbox staple, a soldier's ration, a kid's playground trade. You wander inside the factory, the air thick with the warm hum of conveyors, as bars slide off the line in neat rows, wrapped in silver foil that glints under gas lamps. Hershey's genius lies in efficiency. He builds an entire town around his factory, complete with houses, schools, and even an amusement park, ensuring workers stay loyal and production never slows. You grin, thinking how it's like Willy Wonka's factory, except instead of Oompa Loompas, it's Pennsylvania farmers running the show talk about a chocolate utopia with a side of apple pie. The bars pile up, ready to ship across the U.S., their simple wrappers a stark contrast to the ornate Swiss packaging, shouting, affordable, louder than elegant. The sensory overload hits you, the low rumble of grinders, the sugary steam curling from vats, the faint crackle of foil as workers pack boxes. Hershey's not just making chocolate, he's making it American, tying it to holidays and heartstrings. You see kids on street corners, trading bars like baseball cards, their laughter echoing as they savor what was once Moctezuma's sacred brew. Remember those Aztec warriors sipping XO coladal before battle? Now it's fueling schoolyard negotiations and first dates. You smirk at the irony cacaos gone from divine ritual to dime store treat, like a rock star trading stadiums for karaoke nights. Hershey's ambition doesn't stop at bars. You catch a glimpse of early experiments with chocolate syrup drizzled over ice cream in soda fountains, a nod to the drugstore culture popping up across America. It's a far cry from the frothy Maya cups you saw, but the spirit's there chocolate as a shared joy, now in a milkshake glass instead of a painted vessel. Another quirky detail pops up. Hershey's workers sometimes tested bars by slipping extras into their pockets, a sweet perk that bosses winked at. Imagine a modern office where sneaking a candy bar is part of the job description, you laugh softly, thinking how that'd make any 9 to 5 way more bearable, like getting paid in snacks instead of stress. The American boom spreads chocolate's reach, with companies like Mars joining the fray, their factories pumping out treats like Snickers by the 1932nd. You feel the energy, the way chocolate weaves into daily life. Soldiers carry it in World War I. Kids beg for it at Halloween. Lovers gift it on Valentine's Day. It's becoming a symbol, not just a snack, but you can't shake the shadow from earlier chapters. The cacao feeding these machines still comes from colonial plantations, where labor conditions remain grim. You pause, the factory's hum lulling you like a soft fan, as you ponder how Hershey's bars carry both joy and a hidden cost, like a catchy tune with lyrics you don't quite want to hear. As you linger in Hershey's chocolate-scented empire, the lights of the factory glowing against the dusk, you sense the story shifting again. America's made chocolate a democratic delight, but the world's hunger is growing, pulling cacao to new frontiers with new challenges waiting in the wings. You're standing on the edge of a cacao plantation in Ghana, West Africa, in the early 20th century. The humid air thick with the scent of fermenting beans and the rustle of broad leaves under a relentless sun. The world's chocolate craze has outgrown the Americas, and now the global spotlight swings to this lush region where cacao trees thrive in the equatorial heat, their pods bursting with beans that fuel factories from Hershey to Cadbury. You hear the soft thud of machetes splitting pods, the chatter of farmers as they pile beans to dry, and you feel the weight of a new chapter unfolding, one where Africa becomes the backbone of a global industry, but not without a steep human cost. The canonical historical event here is the rise of West Africa as the world's cacao powerhouse, starting in the late 1802, when British and French colonial powers introduced cacao to Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. By the 1922, these regions produce over 70% of the world's cacao, surpassing Latin America's output. You watch farmers in Ghana, many descendants of local tribes, tend rows of trees planted under colonial rule, their hands stained from slicing pods, open to reveal the slimy, bitter seeds inside. The beans are spread on banana leaves to ferment, a process that smells like a mix of vinegar and overripe fruit, transforming raw cacao into the rich flavor you know from a Hershey bar. You smirk, thinking how this sweaty, smelly work is the unsung hero behind your midnight chocolate binge, kind of like the crew cleaning up after a rock concert. Vital but invisible, an odd detail catches your attention. Some farmers chew raw cacao beans as a snack, spitting out the bitter pulp, a habit that puzzles European overseers who see cacao only as a commodity, not a treat. You chuckle, imagining a farmer popping beans like trail mix, while a British trader grimaces, muttering about savage tastes. Talk about cultural disconnect, like someone side-eyeing your love for spicy hot wings. Historians still debate whether West Africa's cacao boom was driven more by colonial coercion or local farmers' adaptability, as communities like the Asante embraced cacao to gain economic leverage, only to face exploitative trade systems that kept profits in European hands. You wander through the plantation, the sun beating down as workers haul baskets to drying racks, their movements steady but weary. The colonial system ensures beans flow to Europe and America, feeding factories that churn out bars by the millions. You see ships docked at Accra's ports, loaded with sacks bound for London or New York, the air buzzing with the clink of coins and contracts. But beneath the commerce, shadows linger from earlier centuries. While slavery is officially abolished, labor practices here are harsh, low wages, long hours, and sometimes forced work echo the plantation cruelties you saw in the Caribbean. You feel the tension, like biting into a chocolate bar and finding a gritty bit you didn't expect, a reminder that sweetness often hides struggle. The global expansion reshapes chocolate's story. You flash to a London sweet shop where kids clutch Cadbury bars, their foil wrappers crinkling like treasure maps, unaware that the beans came from a Ghanaian farmer who's never tasted the finished product. Remember Hershey's factory hum from Pennsylvania? It's now powered by these African beans, the supply chain stretching across oceans like a global relay race. You grin at the thought of a cacao bean with frequent flyer miles, jet-setting from Accra to Amsterdam. But the humor fades when you see children as young as 10 working the fields, some trafficked or unpaid, a grim reality that persists even today. It's like finding out your favorite song was recorded in a sweatshop suddenly. The melody doesn't sound so sweet. Cacao's new home in West Africa brings innovation too. You notice farmers experimenting with hybrid trees to boost yields, their knowledge blending with colonial science in a quiet dance of adaptation. An unusual practice stands out. Some coat cacao pods with ash to ward off pests, a trick passed down through generations, like an ancient version of organic pest control. You laugh softly, picturing a modern hipster farmer touting ash-coated cacao as the next artisanal trend move over avocado toast. But the reality hits harder. These farmers earn pennies per pound, while chocolate companies rake in billions, a gap that feels as wide as the Atlantic. You shift to Côte d'Ivoire, where French planters push for even bigger harvests, the forests shrinking as cacao fields sprawl. The environmental toll creeps in deforestation, soil depletion, but the world's hunger for chocolate drowns out the warnings. You stand in a market in Abidjan, vendors selling crude cocoa paste for local stews, a nod to cacao's savory roots in Mesoamerica. It's a reminder of the Maya's chili-laced drinks, now a world away, but still echoing in these traditions. You smirk again, wondering if a Ghanaian farmer and a Maya priest could swap recipes over a campfire. Imagine the culinary collab of the century. As you linger in the humid fields, the drone of insects blending with workers' songs, you sense chocolate's global grip tightening. West Africa's beans feed a world obsessed with bars, kisses, and truffles. But the cost human, environmental looms larger. The air cools slightly, like a fan kicking on in the heat, as the narrative shifts toward chocolate's cultural rise, where it becomes more than food, it becomes a feeling, a symbol, a story, still unfolding. You're wandering through a bustling American street in the early 20th century, the air alive with the honk of Model T Fords and the chatter of kids clutching shiny candy wrappers as chocolate weaves itself into the fabric of everyday life. The scent of melted sugar and cocoa drifts from corner stores where Hershey bars and Mars Snickers line the shelves like little ambassadors of joy. You're not in a royal palace or a jungle anymore. This is the world of lunchboxes, soda fountains, and holiday traditions, where chocolate stops being just a treat and becomes a symbol of love, comfort, and celebration, wrapping itself around hearts as tightly as foil around a bar. The canonical historical event here is chocolate's integration into global culture, solidified by the 1922nd when mass-produced bars like Hershey's and Cadbury's become icons of modern life, tied to moments that define human connection. You see soldiers in World War I trenches, their muddy hands unwrapping chocolate bars, tucked into rations, a fleeting taste of home amid the chaos. The bars melt slightly in their pockets, the creamy sweetness a reminder of normalcy, and you can almost taste it yourself, milky, simple, grounding. You smirk, thinking how a Hershey bar probably saved more morale than a general's pep talk. Imagine a soldier trading a cigarette for a bite, calling it battlefield currency. You drift to a small-town American classroom where kids swap chocolate coins at Halloween, their giggles echoing as they stuff their faces with treats that were once Moctezuma's sacred brew. Valentine's Day brings heart-shaped boxes, ribbons curling like promises, as lovers exchange chocolates with shy smiles. You grin at the irony. The Aztecs drank saca for strength before war, and now it's fueling awkward first dates like swapping a warrior's potion for a rom-com prop. Easter joins the party with chocolate eggs and bunnies flooding shops, their foil wrappers glinting under spring sunlight. The sensory rush hits you, the crinkle of foil, the soft snap of a hollow bunny, the sugary melt that feels like a holiday in your mouth. An odd detail pops up in this cultural shift. Early 20th century chocolate ads often pitched it as a health food, claiming it boosted energy or even cured nervous ailments. You chuckle, picturing a 1,922nd mom handing her kid a chocolate bar like it's a vitamin, saying, "Eat this, it's basically broccoli." Doctors back then prescribed it for everything from fatigue to heartbreak, a nod to the Aztec belief in cacao's vitality, though now it's less about gods and more about marketing. Historians still debate whether these health claims were pure hype or rooted in cacao's natural stimulants like theobromine, but either way, it hooks the public, turning chocolate into a daily ritual rather than a rare treat. You step into a British tea shop where Cadbury's Dairy Milk bars are sold alongside scones, the purple wrappers as iconic as the Union Jack. Across the ocean in Japan, chocolate starts appearing in delicate gift boxes, a ritual of precision and respect that echoes the Maya's ceremonial cups you saw ages ago. You feel the global threads weaving together. Chocolate's no longer tied to one culture. It's universal, adapting to every tradition. In Mexico, it's still used in mole, a savory sauce that blends cacao with chilies, a gritty reminder of its ancient roots. You laugh softly, imagining a chef pitching mole at a modern food truck, calling it chocolate tacos for the soul. The cultural boom isn't just about eating, it's about feeling. You see ads plastering billboards, showing smiling families or swooning couples, chocolate framed as the key to happiness. Mars introduces Snickers in 1930, blending peanuts and caramel for a meal in a bar. And you can't help but grin at the tagline talk about the original protein bar for people too lazy to cook. Chocolate becomes a shorthand for nostalgia, love, and reward, sneaking into movies, songs, and even wartime propaganda, where it's the soldier's best friend next to his rifle. You picture a 1,940-second radio ad crooning, "Give her a chocolate, win her heart, and roll your eyes like it's that easy, pal." Yet the shadows linger. You flash back to Ghana's plantations, where the beans for these bars are harvested, often by underpaid farmers or worse, child laborers. The contrast stings. Kids in America trade chocolate coins, while kids in Côte d'Ivoire carry heavy sacks, their hands calloused from pods they'll never taste as candy. You feel the weight, like biting into a truffle and finding it hollow, the sweetness tainted by reality. An unusual practice catches your eye. Some American factories add a touch of salt to early chocolate bars to enhance flavor, a trick that puzzles European tasters but hooks US consumers. Guess that's where our love for salty sweet combos started, like dumping popcorn into your hot cocoa. As you linger in this vibrant era, the buzz of street life fading like a soft fan, you sense chocolate's role solidifying. It's no longer just food, it's memory, emotion, culture. You smirk one last time, wondering if the Maya priests could have imagined their sacred beans starring in a Valentine's Day ad, or if they'd just shake their heads at our obsession. The story's turning again, heading toward a rediscovery of those ancient roots. But for now, chocolate's the world's sweetheart, wrapping everyone in its sugary embrace. You're stepping into a cozy San Francisco shop in the early 2002, the air alive with the rich, earthy scent of roasting cacao beans and the soft clink of ceramic mugs as artisans pour molten chocolate into molds. Outside, the city hums with tech startups and organic markets. But in here, it's all about slowing down, peeling back the layers of industrial chocolate to rediscover the bean's ancient soul. The craft chocolate movement is blooming, and you're in the thick of it, watching chocolatiers treat cacao like fine wine, savoring its origins, its flavors, its story. This isn't the mass-produced Hershey bar you munched on in Pennsylvania. This is chocolate with a conscience, a return to roots that feels like a quiet rebellion against the factory churn. The canonical historical event sparking this revival is the rise of the craft chocolate movement around 2000, when small-scale makers like Scharfenberger and Mass Brothers start focusing on single-origin beans, emphasizing terroir, the unique flavors tied to a bean's region, soil, and climate. You watch a chocolatier in a linen apron grind beans from Madagascar, the air filling with bright, citrusy notes, nothing like the nutty depth of Ecuadorian cacao you smell nearby. It's a sensory wake-up call, like tasting coffee from different farms and realizing your old instant brew was a lie. You smirk, thinking how these hipster chocolatiers are basically the Maya priests of today, minus the jaguar carvings. But with the same reverence for the bean, imagine them chanting, "Bean to bar," like a sacred mantra. You lean over a counter, watching a batch being tempered, the chocolate gleaming as it's poured, cooled, and stirred to a glossy finish. The craft movement isn't just about taste. It's about ethics, a push to know where beans come from and who grows them. You see labels boasting direct trade or fair trade, promising farmers better wages than the pennies they got in Ghana's plantations. An odd detail catches your eye. Some makers add inclusions like sea salt or dried lavender, but one quirky chocolatier tosses in roasted crickets for a nutty crunch. Yep, bug chocolate, the kind of thing you dare your friend to try at a party. You chuckle, picturing an Aztec warrior nodding approvingly at the protein boost, like, finally, a snack with some grit. Historians still debate whether this craft revival is driven more by culinary curiosity or a backlash against industrial exploitation, but you feel it's both a hunger for authenticity in a world of processed sameness. The movement spreads beyond California, with small shops popping up in Brooklyn, London, even Tokyo, each one celebrating cacao's diversity. You wander a craft chocolate festival, stalls brimming with bars from Venezuela, Uganda, Belize, each with a story printed on the wrapper, the farmer's name, the soil's secrets, the fermentation's magic. It's like a wine tasting, but for cocoa nerds, and you can't help but grin at the intensity people sniffing bars like they're judging a fine Bordeaux. Remember the Swiss conching that made chocolate silky? Craft makers take it further, sometimes hand grinding for days to coax out flavors big factories bury under sugar. You taste a sample, the chocolate melting with a tart, almost fruity zing, and it hits you. This is what the Maya drank, stripped of sweetness, raw and alive. The revival isn't just about flavor, it's about reconnecting to cacao's roots. You see chefs in Oaxaca, Mexico, reviving ancient recipes, grinding cacao with chilies for mole, or whisking it into frothy drinks like the Maya did centuries ago. Indigenous communities share stories, reminding everyone that chocolate wasn't born in a factory, but in a forest. You feel the weight of history, like flipping through an old family album and finding photos you never knew existed. Another quirky practice stands out. Some makers use stone grinders, mimicking Mesoamerican medites, to keep the texture gritty and real. Imagine selling rustic chocolate at a farmer's market and watching hipsters lose their minds over the authenticity. The ethical push hits home too. You flash to a documentary screening where activists highlight child labor in Côte d'Ivoire's cacao fields, sparking murmurs among the crowd. Craft makers respond, working directly with farmers, paying premiums for quality beans grown without exploitation. You see a Ghanaian farmer on a video call, proudly showing his cacao trees, his smile wide as he talks about fair wages. It's a far cry from the colonial shadows you saw, though the fight's not over. You smirk lightly, thinking how buying a $10 craft bar feels like joining a cause, like signing a petition with your taste buds, though you'd rather not admit that to your wallet. The sensory details pull you in, the snap of a bar breaking, the faint floral notes rising from a dark chocolate square, the quiet hum of a roaster in the background. It's intimate, like curling up with a good book, each bite telling a story of soil and hands. You laugh softly, imagining a Maya priest time-traveling to this shop, nodding at the stone grinder, but raising an eyebrow at the cricket bar like, "Nice try, but where's the chili?" The craft movement is rewriting chocolate's narrative, pulling it back to its sacred origins while pushing it forward. A bridge between past and present that's as bold as it is bittersweet. As you linger in the shop, the soft glow of fairy lights fading like a gentle fan, you sense the story turning toward deeper questions about ethics, sustainability, and what it means to honor a bean's journey in a world still wrestling with its shadows. You're standing in a sun-drenched cacao grove in Côte d'Ivoire, the early 21st century, where the humid air clings to your skin and the sharp scent of fermenting beans mixes with the buzz of insects and distant voices of farmers. The world's chocolate obsession has made West Africa its beating heart, supplying over 70% of global cacao. But as you watch, workers slice open pods with calloused hands, you sense a bitter undercurrent: labor abuses, environmental strain, and a supply chain that often leaves farmers scraping by while corporations rake in billions. This isn't the cozy craft shop you left behind. It's the raw reality of where most chocolate begins, and it's messy, complicated, like a truffle with a sour center you didn't expect. The canonical historical event here is the exposure of modern cacao industry issues, sparked by investigative reports in the early 2000s, like the 2001 BBC documentary revealing child labor and trafficking on West African plantations. You watch a farmer spread beans on banana leaves, the pile steaming under the sun as it ferments, while nearby, young workers, some barely teens, carry heavy sacks. The scene hits hard. These kids, often lured by false promises of wages, work grueling hours for pennies, sometimes none at all. You feel the weight, like biting into a chocolate bar and tasting guilt instead of sweetness. You smirk faintly, thinking how a candy aisle feels like a crime scene. Now imagine a warning label saying, "May contain traces of exploitation," right next to "contains nuts." An odd detail catches your eye. Some farmers paint their cacao pods with bright colors to deter thieves, a vibrant but desperate measure in regions where poverty pushes people to steal what little others have. You chuckle softly, picturing a pod glowing neon green like a disco ball in the jungle. But the humor fades fast. Stealing's no joke when a farmer's entire income fits in a single sack. Historians still debate whether the cacao industry's issues stem more from colonial legacies or modern corporate greed. But you see both at play. The same extractive systems you saw in Caribbean plantations centuries ago, now dressed up with global trade jargon and shiny wrappers. You flash to a boardroom in London, where executives in suits sip coffee and discuss sustainability initiatives, while graphs show rising profits. Certifications like Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance are gaining traction, their logos plastered on bars to ease consumer consciences. But you sense the gap. Only a fraction of cacao is certified, and even then, farmers often see minimal benefits. You wander a supermarket aisle, shelves stacked with bars from Nestlé to Lindt, their wrappers boasting ethical sourcing, yet reports whisper of children still harvesting beans in 2025. It's a disconnect, like streaming a feel-good movie while ignoring the sweatshop that made your television. The environmental toll hits you next. You see bulldozers clearing forests in Ghana, making way for more cacao trees, the soil eroding under relentless planting cycles. Deforestation isn't just a buzzword, it's the loss of ecosystems, the hum of wildlife fading as monoculture takes over. You recall the Maya's sacred groves, where cacao was grown in harmony with the jungle, and wince at the contrast. An unusual practice stands out. Some farmers burn cacao husks to create ash fertilizer, a sustainable trick that echoes ancient methods but struggles against the scale of industrial demand. You grin lightly, imagining a farmer pitching cacao ash compost on a startup show, only to be told it's not scalable enough. Typical corporate shade. The sensory details pull you in. The sticky heat of the grove, the crunch of pods underfoot, the faint sourness of fermenting beans lingering in the air. You hear farmers singing work songs, their voices weaving resilience into the labor, a faint echo of the enslaved workers' defiance centuries ago. You smirk, thinking how those songs could be the soundtrack to a gritty documentary, one that'd make you rethink your midnight chocolate stash. The craft movement's push for ethics, which you saw in San Francisco, is trying to change this direct trade. Makers pay premiums, visit farms, build schools, but it's a drop in the ocean. You flash to a Ghanaian farmer, showing a chocolatier his crop, proud but exhausted, his kids playing nearby, hopefully in school instead of the fields. The fight's not over. You see activists rallying in Europe, boycotting brands that dodge accountability. Their posters as bold as the cacao pods you saw painted. Technology's helping blockchain tracks beans from farm to bar, ensuring transparency, but adoption's slow. You laugh softly, imagining a cacao bean with a QR code, like it's got its own LinkedIn profile. The narrative hums, heavy but hopeful, like a fan cutting through the grove's heat. The world's waking up, but change is slow, and every bar you eat carries this story, joyful, painful, human. As you linger in the grove, the sun dipping low, you sense the tale turning toward a reconnection with cacao's ancient roots, a chance to honor its past while fixing its present. The beans glisten, ready for harvest, whispering of a story still being written. You're standing in a vibrant market in Oaxaca, Mexico, in the 2022nd, the air buzzing with the chatter of vendors and the sharp scent of chili and roasted cacao wafting from clay pots. The sun beats down on colorful stalls, where women in embroidered aprons grind cacao on stone metates, their hands moving in a rhythm that feels ancient, unbroken, like a heartbeat carried through centuries. This isn't the industrial grind of Hershey's factories or the exploited fields of Côte d'Ivoire. It's a homecoming, a revival of cacao's Mesoamerican roots, where the bean is once again sacred, savored, and shared with reverence. You feel the pull of history, like flipping back to the first page of a book you thought you'd finished, and you're ready to taste the past in every gritty sip. The canonical historical event here is the resurgence of traditional cacao practices in the 21st century, fueled by indigenous communities and chefs in Mexico and Central America who are reclaiming cacao's cultural significance after centuries of colonial and industrial erasure. You watch a Zapotec woman whisk a frothy cacao drink, blending it with cinnamon and chili, just like the Maya did over 1,000 years ago. The steam rises in lazy curls, carrying a spicy kick that tingles your nose, and you can almost taste the bitter warmth, no sugar to soften its edge. It's a far cry from the milk chocolate bars you munched in Pennsylvania, more like a time machine, in a cup raw, intense, alive. You smirk, thinking how this drink would make a Starbucks barista sweat, trying to recreate it for a rush hour crowd. An odd detail catches your eye. Some vendors add dried corn to their cacao drinks, creating a thick, porridge-like texture called tejate, a nod to ancient recipes that shocks modern palates, expecting something sweet. You chuckle, imagining a tourist sipping it and whispering, "Is this oatmeal or chocolate?" Like ordering a smoothie and getting a soup instead. Historians still debate whether this revival is more about cultural pride or a response to global demand for authentic flavors, but you see it as both, a reclaiming of identity that doubles as a middle finger to the industrialized bars that buried cacao's soul under layers of sugar. You wander deeper into the market, the sensory overload wrapping around you like a warm blanket, the grind of stone on cacao, the sizzle of mole simmering with cacao and chilies, the laughter of kids clutching cacao-dusted tamales. Indigenous communities, like the Maya and Zapotec, are leading this charge, sharing recipes passed down through oral traditions, untouched by colonial recipe books. You see a chef at a nearby stall demonstrating how to make champorado, a hot cacao drink thickened with masa, served at festivals to honor ancestors. It's a ritual, not a snack, and you feel the weight of connection. Remember the Maya priests pouring cacao for the gods? It's the same spirit, now poured for community, not conquest. The revival spreads beyond Mexico. In Guatemala, you glimpse women teaching cacao workshops, showing tourists how to roast beans over open fires, the smoke curling like an offering to the sky. Museums in Chiapas display ancient cacao vessels, their glyphs telling stories of kings and deities, while local co-ops sell bars made from heirloom beans, their flavors earthy and untamed. You grin, picturing a Maya noble nodding approvingly at these efforts. then raising an eyebrow at the $12 price tag on a 70% dark bar like, "Nice hustle, but my cacao was free." The movement's global too. Craft chocolatiers in Europe and the US collaborate with indigenous farmers, blending their beans into bars that honor their origins, a bridge between past and present. Yet, challenges linger. You flash to a panel discussion in Mexico City where activists highlight how industrial cacao still overshadows these efforts, with big brands buying cheap beans while small producers struggle to compete. The environmental toll you saw in West Africa, deforestation, soil depletion, threatens Mesoamerica too, as commercial farms encroach on traditional lands. An unusual practice stands out. Some communities plant cacao alongside native trees to preserve biodiversity, a nod to ancient shade. Grown methods that feels like a quiet rebellion against monoculture. You laugh softly, imagining a farmer pitching jungle chocolate to a corporate buyer, only to get a blank stare. Sustainability's a tough sell when profits rule. The sensory details keep pulling you in. The crackle of a fire under a roasting pan, the faint floral notes of a fresh cacao pod, the hum of market voices weaving Spanish and indigenous languages. It's intimate, like sitting around a family table, each sip or bite carrying stories of resilience. You smirk again, wondering if Moctezuma would trade his golden cups for a taste of this tejate, or if he'd just demand a bigger cup. The revival isn't just about food, it's about memory, identity, and healing the wounds of history, one bean at a time. As you linger in the market, the sun dipping low and casting golden shadows, the narrative hums softly, like a fan stirring the warm air. Cacao's come full circle, but its story isn't done. It's ready to reflect on its legacy, a tale of joy, pain, and enduring human connection. You're standing at the edge of history, not in a single place but everywhere. Markets in Oaxaca, factories in Pennsylvania, groves in Ghana, salons in Paris, where cacao's journey weaves through time like a thread stitching together human stories. The air carries a faint cocoa scent, a whisper of ancient jungles and modern candy aisles, as you reflect on a tiny bean that's outlasted empires, sparked revolutions, and become a mirror for civilization itself. This is chocolate's legacy, not just a treat, but a saga of joy, suffering, and reinvention. And you're here to wrap it up, savoring its layers like a slow melting truffle on a quiet night. The canonical historical event here is the enduring global impact of chocolate, solidified by the 21st century as it transforms from a Mesoamerican ritual to a universal symbol, touching every culture from Maya temples to Japanese gift shops. You see a kid in Chicago unwrapping a Hershey's Kiss, its foil glinting like a tiny star, while a chef in Mexico City stirs cacao into a savory mole, honoring ancestors with every whisk. Chocolate's not just food, it's love, celebration, comfort, woven into holidays like Valentine's Day, where heart-shaped boxes flood stores, or Halloween, where kids trade candy like pirates splitting treasure. You smirk, thinking how the Aztec's warrior brew now fuels sugar highs and first date jitters. Talk about a glow-up, like a bard turning into a pop star. An odd detail stands out. In some cultures, chocolate's used in funerals, like in parts of Mexico, where cacao drinks are offered to honor the dead, echoing Maya tomb offerings you saw centuries ago. You chuckle softly, imagining a mourner toasting with hot cocoa instead of wine, whispering, "To you, abuela," with extra chili. It's a reminder that chocolate's always carried meaning beyond taste, whether for gods or grief. Historians still debate whether chocolate's global spread owes more to its flavor or its ability to adapt, slipping into every tradition like a chameleon with a sweet-tooth Valentine's hearts in America, delicate bonbons in Japan, or spicy champurrado in Guatemala, you drift through moments. A soldier in World War II sharing a chocolate bar in a foxhole, a couple in Paris splitting a praline under cafe lights, a farmer in Côte d'Ivoire planting cacao under shade trees, hoping for a fairer future. The sensory pull is strong, the snap of a bar, the warm spice of a drink, the crinkle of a wrapper like a promise kept. Yet the shadows linger. You recall the exploited fields of West Africa, where farmers still earn pennies while corporations profit, and the deforested jungles that once cradled cacao like a sacred child. Chocolate Story is a paradox. Its ingenuity, blending indigenous beans with European sugar and Swiss precision, but also exploitation, built on colonial greed and modern inequities. You grin faintly, thinking it's like a rom-com with a dark subplot sweet on the surface. But the backstory stings. The craft revival you saw in San Francisco and Oaxaca fights to balance this, with artisans and indigenous communities reclaiming cacao's soul. But it's a slow climb. You see a barista in Tokyo pouring a ceremonial cacao drink, a nod to ancient rituals, while apps track beans from farm to shelf, promising transparency. It's progress, but incomplete, like a recipe missing one key spice. Another quirky detail: some modern chocolatiers age their bars like whiskey, letting them sit for months to deepen flavors. Imagine a chocolate vintage label, hyped up like fine wine at a snooty auction. You laugh, picturing a Maya priest rolling his eyes at the fuss, muttering, "Just drink it already." Chocolate's legacy endures because it evolves. From Olmec ceremonies to Hershey's kisses, it's carried human stories: creation, conquest, resilience. You feel its weight, like holding a bar and knowing it's more than sugar and cocoa. It's centuries of hands, from jungle farmers to factory workers. It's joy, like a kid's smile at Easter, but also pain, like a child's labor in a distant field. You linger on this, the narrative humming softly, like a fan spinning in the background, as you realize chocolate's not just a treat, it's a mirror, reflecting humanity's best and worst, its hunger for sweetness and its struggle for justice. As you stand in this timeless space, the world softens, the edges blurring like a dream, fading at dawn. The scent of cacao lingers, warm and grounding, inviting you to rest, to reflect, to carry this story forward. You've walked with gods, conquerors, and farmers, tasted the bitter and the sweet, and now it's time to let the tale settle, like chocolate melting slowly on your tongue, whispering of past and present in every quiet breath. You're drifting now, the world slowing as the hum of cacao's story fades into a gentle whisper, like the soft whir of a fan lulling you to sleep. The jungle groves, the gilded salons, the factory clatter, they blur into a single warm glow, the scent of chocolate lingering like a memory you can almost taste. You've journeyed from sacred Maya cups to modern craft bars, from the hands of farmers to the hearts of lovers, and you've seen it all: the divine, the brutal, the bittersweet. Chocolate's not just a flavor, it's a thread tying humanity's triumphs and flaws, a story that comforts as much as it challenges. So rest easy now, let the sweetness settle, and know that every bite carries centuries of care, struggle, and hope. The tale's not over. It lives in every pod, every bar, every sip you take. Sleep well, dream deep, and let the bean's legacy cradle you tonight.